Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another week of At Ping. We've got a video submission today and a couple of written ones, so let's jump into that first video question.
G'day Ping, Mick here from Australia. My question is, what does a factory 450 bike actually cost? You see on social media platforms all the trick aftermarket parts that go onto these bikes, so I've always been curious as to what the actual cost would be.
All right, thanks Mick. It's super difficult to answer this question because there's a lot of those parts on the works bikes or factory bikes that are not for sale. They're built in Japan. They don't obviously list those prices, and so to try to put a number on that is pretty difficult. You could say that makes it priceless. I mean, it's works parts or factory parts from Japan or handmade stuff here, it's just tough to say. My guess, if I had to throw a ballpark at it, would be $30,000 to $50,000. I don't know if that's higher or lower than what you're thinking, but that's probably where it is. But that would be just like hard parts. So here's the component that some people don't even think about when they're talking about the value of a race bike like that is, it's the man hours that it takes to get that bike to the line at Anaheim 1, right? Think about the suspension technician, the motor guy, the guy running the dyno, like guys going out and doing all the testing. Like there is so much staff putting in so much effort on all these teams to be ready to go racing. So they take those parts that are expensive and they're the best that they can source, but then they take and tune it to that rider, and that's where the value comes in. It isn't the part. I could bolt work suspension onto your bike that's not set up for you, and you are not going to like it, I promise. But you get those guys to come out with you from KYB or Showa and work with you and get that thing just dialed. Well, it'd be the best stuff you've ever ridden. So that's the tough part to quantify, is what's their time worth? What are all those man hours worth? And I guess you could break down to their pay scale and everything else and come up with a number, but I'm just not willing to do that much work. I'm sorry. So I'm going to say it's probably 30 to 50K on the bike itself. And then, it's a lot of man hours and it goes on all season. It doesn't just quit when you get to Anaheim. It keeps going all year. So that's where I think it gets expensive, right? Is when you start tallying that stuff up. So appreciate the video, Mick. Thanks for sending it in, man. Next one is coming from Shredder. Hey Ping, do you have a date for your 250F shootout? Can't wait. Most importantly, will you be sporting the stash? And do you have to tweak the clickers a little extra to offset the weight of it? On a less serious question, I was looking at a new 450F, but after hearing you say you were doing 250S with your experience, I sort of thought, why would I, a 56-year-old intermediate vet rider, 170 pounds, 5'8", be messing around with a 450? Thoughts? Okay, so a couple things. The shootout's happening today, this week. You will see it by this weekend or first of next week, I would say, probably at the latest. And I'm not in it. It didn't work out for my schedule. I'm working the days they're shooting, and so it just is what it is. It's a bummer. But you'll see it soon. The mustache, it's coming back. Look at that thing. It's just a little bit soft right now, but give it a couple weeks. It's going to be ugly. I'm going to get some hate mail. That's kind of just the way it goes, and that's fine. And as far as the 450, 250 question, man, I get asked this a lot, and I'll tell anyone that'll listen. Unless you're racing really competitively, ride what you can ride for a longer amount of time and have more fun on. All right, and 450 horsepower is fun. It's a lot of fun, right? When the track's perfectly groomed and you grab a handful and you feel like a hero. But what kind of riding are you doing? If it's trails and tight, you're going to have more fun on a 250 anyway. You can move the thing around easier. If the tracks are rough and choppy, you're going to have more fun on a 250F because you're going to be able to feel more in control of it. You're going to be able to ride longer. You just got to really consider what you're after. And for most people, a 250F's all you need. It is a lot of bike still. And looking at your weight and height, I mean, you weigh 170 pounds, you'd be perfect on a 250. That's my opinion. I wouldn't mess with the 450. I think they're more dangerous. You're going to get arm pump. I mean, I get arm pump on them. I go out, unless I'm riding a lot, I can do 2 or 3 laps at speed and I'm pumped up. I get on 250, I can do, 10 laps and then I'm exhausted and I got to pull off anyway. But anyway, I think it's a really good option. You should look at it. And that's it. People think, oh, I'm gonna ride 450. That's the man's bike. Like their ego gets in the way. Your ego is not your amigo. Remember that. And pick a bike that you have fun on. All right, thanks for the letter. I appreciate it, Shredder. Last one comes from Matt, who is down in Australia. He says, hey, Ping, thanks for everything you do with the Whiskey Throttle Show. I'm a massive fan, and I have listened to every single show you've put out. They're all fantastic. Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. One, it seems that the current generation RMZs seem to be the black sheep of the current crop of MX bikes available today, and that every man and his dog are hating on them and saying how rubbish they are. I'm wondering if it's just a case of the internet saying they're bad, so they must be the worst thing ever. Much like the first generation alloy frame CRs, the internet has a loud voice, but I'm not so sure it's one we should all be listening to. It seems everyone has an opinion on those bikes, but I'm sure the majority have never sat on them. Surely the RMZ and that old CR weren't as bad as everyone says they really are. What are your thoughts? That's question 1. Question 2, as a rider who gets to test the majority of the most up-to-date bikes, how are you able to stay objective towards each of them? Everyone has a preferred color of bike and a way they like their bike set up and to feel, but how can you separate that feeling without having a negative feeling towards a different bike when it doesn't feel like your daily driver? I've ridden Cowies for the majority of my time on bikes, and I know anytime I jump on my buddy's bikes, be it a Honda, Suzuki, or Husky, for instance, I don't really feel connected to it because it doesn't feel like my bike. Penny for your thoughts. Thanks, Ping. Cheers, Matt from Oz. Let's start with the, well, first of all, thank you for supporting the show. I appreciate it. We're having a lot of fun with it, and Ernesto Fonseca coming on next week, so really looking forward to talking to Ernie. So thank you for that. First question, Suzukis are still a great bike. You have to, when we do shootouts and it gets last and everybody poo-poos it, you have to understand with all those bikes, we're splitting hairs a lot of times. It's like, this one pulls a little bit better here, or this one suits my style, or this one fits me better, or man, they're really close. And that Suzuki, the way it sometimes comes off is that this thing is so off the back, it's a pile. No. Yes, it needs electric start. Yes, the suspension is not great in stock trim. But like I said, I've thrown good valving into those things, an exhaust and a high compression piston, and it's as competitive as anything. It's a great motorcycle. Look at all the championships that were won on that platform, and it hasn't changed a whole lot since Ricky won all those titles on it, Reed won titles on it, Dungey won titles on it. It's an awesome motorcycle. It's an awesome, solid platform. The electric start's a bummer and some of those other things, but it's a great bike. And for the average guy, again, if you're not racing competitively, yeah, you have to kickstart it. Okay, I know, big deal. The internet it's undefeated to this day for a reason. Your second question, super intriguing. How do I keep bias out of testing, right? It's a pretty easy answer for me. I don't get to ride my own bikes as much as I'd like. If I say, let's say I rode 50 times a year, which is probably a pretty accurate number, I would tell you that 40 of those rides, I'm on test bikes, and they're all different sizes and brands and everything, right? So I never really get comfortable like on my personal bike to where it just feels like an old sweatshirt you put on, like it's just, I never get to that point. And it's a shame, but it also does help me to stay really neutral when I'm testing, doing a comparison test, right? So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't think that I get on one bike and it feels so much more comfortable than any of the others. So that's where I'm at. Anyway, I do have, you can see a bike behind me. These are bikes I'm getting ready to start building, but like I said, I may ride them a handful of more times per year than the other brands, but it's just not the way my job works here on these things. I'm kind of spread all over the place, so it's good. Thank you everybody for sending your questions. I appreciate it. I especially love the videos. If you guys are able to do that, I just like to be able to connect through video. That way it seems a little more personal. But either way, happy to answer questions and stoked you guys are enjoying them. So see you next week.